Inflation matrix. December's price rise numbers do not ring in enough relief. In the final inflation print before the Union budget of 25-26 is presented, followed by the first review of monetary policy led by a new governor of RBI in early February, the price rise faced by the Indian consumer eased to 5.22% in December. Although a 4-month low, this is still marked only a mild decline from November's 5.5% uptick in CPI and was largely driven by sequential easing in food prices. Food inflation moderated from over 9% in the previous month to 8.4% last month, and though inflation in vegetables cooled from 29 to 26%, it remained generally high. Households still forked out a lot more for their meals than they did a year ago. It must be recalled that overall inflation was 5.7% and food price rise over 9.5% in December 2023. While prices for some food items, including vegetables, are seen cooling further this month, those of a few critical ingredients have started spiking, including edible oils that rose at a 33-month high price pace of 14.6 in December. Eggs, meat, and fruit saw inflation accelerating last month, along with relatively humble potato, up to 68%. Moreover, inflation in wholesale prices have gained pace, signaling there is room for higher costs to be passed on to consumers for food items as well as manufactured products. The government and industry want the RBI to cut interest rates to reinvigorate consumption and fading growth impulses by looking through volatile food inflation. But even industry captains admit that keeping food prices out of the interest rates and growth inflation balancing act will not suffice. Moreover, even if the weightage for food in CPI is reduced in line with the recent household consumption spending service result, food price tends to have a material impact on the spending propensity of households and their inflation expectations. Inflation may yet average 4.5% through January to March, as the RBI expects, but the central bank that has committed to await a durable alignment to its 4% goal before slashing rates has a difficult call to make in February. Tangible measures, if any, to ease price pressures in the budget, along with some visibility on center's fiscal glide path, could help tip the scales for rate cut cycle to begin soon, if not next month. There are a few new imponderables that have compounded the trade-off matrix for policymakers in North Block as well as Mint Street. The swift unraveling of the rupee vis-a-vis the dollar in recent weeks, which raises the risk of importing inflation, among other collateral effects, especially global oil prices have resurged to multi-months high. A very nuanced approach is imperative to avoid fresh missteps. The deciphering of Indus script should not be clouded by politics. The recent announcement of Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin of a $1 million prize scheme for deciphering script of Hindu Indus Valley civilization seems to have revived popular interest in the subject, which remains a puzzle to archaeologists, historians, and linguists. His invitations for further research was made in the context of a centenary celebration of IVC discovery, which was published by the then Chief of Archaeological Survey of India, John Marshall, in September 1924, spread across 1.5 million square kilometers in the territories of modern day India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan during the Bronze Age. The Indus Valley civilization was essentially urban, even though there has been large number of objects and materials of archaeological value in support of IVC. The decipherment of seals and tablets have not been to the satisfaction of all. About 20 years ago, a group of Western scholars have argued that writing was not a necessity of ancient urban settlements, not even as massive as those of Harappans, and that a handful of unknown symbols could no longer be claimed as evidence of writing. Since then, there has been an exchange of scholarly views and against the theory of Indus civilization being a highly literate society. It is against the context that Mr. Stalin's announcement needs to be seen. There is a school of thought that There was a script which was Proto-Dravidian, non-Aryan, and pre-Aryan. This could be a reason why southern state Tamil Nadu has made an offer. The state government has supported a study on Indus signs and graffiti marks of Tamil Nadu as part of the project of documentation and digitization of graffiti and Tamil Brahmi inscribed potheads of Tamil Nadu. Researchers faced challenges while resolving the Indus riddle. There is a complaint that entire database regarding the seals has not been yet made available in the public domain. While allowing free access to these resources, central and state authorities should ensure that the context for them is also provided. More importantly, studies should be carried out without any interference. The likelihood of the proposed study findings going against the established and particular narratives should not be allowed to cloud intellectual pursuit. There is also scope for well coordinated work among South Asian countries, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, to unravel the mystery. But if political differences are permitted to adversely impact the execution of any such study, the world and India will be much the poorer for it. India's real growth rate and the forecast. C. Rangarajan is the former chairman, Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, and former Governor, Reserve Bank of India, and D.K. Srivastava is the honorary professor of Madras School of Economics and Advisory Council to the 16th Finance Commission. The first advanced estimates of national accounts for 24-25 shows that real GDP of growth of 6.4% and a nominal GDP growth of 9.7%. Real GDP growth of 6.4% and nominal GDP growth of 9.7%. These numbers have fallen short of the RBI's revised growth estimates of 6.6% of real GDP as in December 24 monetary policy statement and 10.5% of nominal GDP growth as in 2024-25 Union Budget presented in July 24. The annual growth of 6.4% can be seen as consisting of 6% growth in first half and 6.7% growth in second half. There is thus a clear improvement expected over the quarter 2 of 5.4%. The sharp fall in 2024-25 annual GDP growth from the previous year at 8.2% is seen only in case of GDP. With respect to gross value added, this difference between 7.2% and 6.4% is much less. On the GVA side, it was the manufacturing sector which suffered a sharp fall in sectoral growth from 9.9% in 23-24 to 5.3% in 24-25. The gross fixed capital formation rate at constant prices has ranged between 33% and 33.3%. The gross fixed capital formation rate at constant prices has ranged between 33% and 33.3 and 33.5% during 21-22 and 2-24-25. Thus, it appears to have stabilized around 33.4%. It is expected to continue at this level in 24-25-26. The average incremental capital output ratio (ICOR) has been marginally higher than 5 in the recent years. Assuming ICOR to be 5.1 in 25-26, we may consider a 6.5% real GDP growth to be realistic. There may not be much change in the global economy even though Donald Trump's assumption of office may create more uncertainty. India will have to be largely dependent on domestic demand. In particular, Government of India has to ensure that there is no relaxation in its investment expenditure. In fact, a slightly lower growth in 24-25 is largely linked to slowdown in Governments of India's investment growth, which has remained negative 12.3% even after 8 months into the fiscal year. With a lower nominal GDP growth in 24-25 of 9.7% as compared to the budgeted nominal growth of 10.5%, the budgeted gross tax revenue growth of 38.4 lakh crore may not be realized if the budgetary buoyancy of 1 is maintained. As per the Controller General of Accounts data, GTR growth for the first 8 months was 10.7%. If the growth is maintained for the remaining months also, the realized buoyancy would be about 1.1. which is higher than the budgeted buoyancy. In such a case, tax revenue shortfall will be minimal. In other words, any revenue constraint or likely pressure on fiscal deficit would not constrain the government's ability to achieve its capital expenditure target of 11 lakh crore. With a lower nominal GDP of 9.7%, GDP growth of 9.7% as compared to budgeted nominal GDP growth of 10.5%, the budgeted gross tax revenue of 38.4 lakh crore may not be realized if the budgeted buoyancy of 1.03 is maintained. As per the Controller General of Accounts data, GTR growth for the first 8 months was 10.7%. If this growth is maintained for the remaining months also, then the realized buoyancy will be 1.1, which is higher than the budgeted buoyancy. In such a case, tax revenue shortfall will be minimal. In other words, any revenue constraint or likely pressure on fiscal deficit would not constrain the government's ability to achieve its capital expenditure target of 11.1 crore. However, after the first 8 months, the level of government's capital expenditure has remained limited to 5.14 lakh crore, that is 46.2% of the budget target. In the remaining 4 months, the Government of India's capital expenditure may be accelerated. It may still it may still fall well off the short of the target. This has been the main reason for the dip in overall GDP growth in 24-25. Going forward in 25-26, the government of India will have to continue rely on an accelerated capital expenditure growth, which can be kept at least 20% on the revised estimates for 24-25. Sustained government capital expenditures can have favorable effect on private investment. The size and pattern of investment expenditure of the government should be designed to accelerate private investment as well. Medium to long term growth prospect over a period of next 5 years, the best that India may hope for is a steady real GDP growth rate of 6.5%. This is in line with the International Monetary Fund's real GDP growth projection for the Indian economy. As in its October 24 release, forward 6.5% over the period of 25-26 to 29-30. This real GDP growth may be accompanied by an implicit price deflator based inflation of about 4%, which can give a nominal GDP growth in the range of 10.5 to 11%. In years in which global conditions improve and contributions of net exports to GDP growth become significant, real GDP growth may touch even 7%. If a real growth of around 6.5% and nominal growth in the range of 10.5 to 11% are maintained over the long run with an average exchange rate depreciation of 2.5% per annum, India should be able to reach to a per capita GDP level consistent with a developed country status in the next 2 decades, 2.5 decades. But the task is not going to be easy. It will be hard to grow at 6.5% as the base keeps on increasing. In fact, in the earlier years, the growth rates will have to be higher, but at present the potential rate of growth appears to be 6.5%. However, it can change. In light of the potential growth rate of 6.5%, the achievement of 6.4% should not be considered as disappointing. In fact, the achievement of 8.2% in 23-24 should be considered as a flash in the pan. The current year's growth rate of 6.4% in the advanced estimates should be seen in the context of India's potential growth rate. The multiple layers of Gaza ceasefire. Just few days before the swearing in of United States President-elect Donald Trump, and few hours before outgoing President Joe Biden gave his final address to the American people on January 15, 2025, Israel and Hamas announcing that long elusive ceasefire agreement over Gaza has been struck. The state of Qatar, long struck in between as a mediator, said that the deal was to take effect from January 1925, a day before Mr. Trump takes charge. An exchange of Israeli hostages and Palestinian prisoners is at the center of this arrangement. The news of the agreement saw Palestinians in Gaza take to the streets in celebration, having faced death and destruction at the hands of Israeli military, whose response to the October 7, 2023 terror attack went on from over 15 months, even as political deadlocks continued. In a statement, Hamas had highlighted that movement dealt with all responsibility and positivity based on responsibility towards our patient and steadfast people in the honorable Gaza Strip. By stopping the Zionist aggression against them and putting an end to the massacre and war of genocide to which they are being subjected. In Washington, D.C., Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden reportedly worked in unison to deliver the deal, even as both tried to lap up the credit. For Mr. Trump, who previously demanded that such a deal should be reached before his presidency, this was marketable advertising of renewed American strength as promised in his election campaign. For Mr. Biden, it is an attempt to salvage legacy. The joker in this geopolitical deck is Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, amidst misplaced perceptions that Mr. Trump would allow Mr. Netanyahu longer leash to continue his military operations in Gaza unabated. Opinion prevailed that Mr. Biden would be good for both stemming and the ongoing conflicts and reining in Israel's military posturing. It is in all likeliness not a coincidence that the Israeli leadership agreed to the deal, which, in parallel with Hamas, it has cutted many times to send a message of partnership and resolve to Mr. Trump. Why Mr. Netanyahu would go out of the way to court Mr. Trump even after the Israeli leader was invited by the Republicans to address a joint session of Congress in July 24 is a question that has a simple answer. Mr. Trump prioritizes personality over policy. Agreeing to this deal with Hamas is offering Mr. Trump a victory at potentially big domestic cost for Mr. Netanyahu. For long, Mr. Netanyahu has maintained that only a complete victory over Hamas is acceptable. With this deal, he becomes an Israeli prime minister who has cut a political statement with the arc foe but without complete elimination of Hamas. There is no doubt that Hamas and also Hezbollah in Lebanon would have their have had their capacities diminished over the past year after leadership decapitation operations conducted by Israel. Simultaneously, outgoing US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has also said that assessments show now that Hamas has recruited as many militants as it has lost. The lack of political track acting as insurance for the ceasefire remains a concern. Hamas is expected to continue to be in control of Gaza in the time to barely come as barely any movements have taken place to reorganize Palestinian politics in a way where the group can be brought under wider and more mainstream Palestinian-led political ecosystem. Hamas by itself will remain steadfast in its ideology against Israeli security and sovereignty, while Hamas and Israel continue to remain on the same page against a two-state solution. Despite a global push for this and being the only viable option available for lasting peace. The prevailing situation of this status quo despite the ceasefire can be leveraged by Mr. Netanyahu in case of Hamas resumes attacks against Israeli territories and populations. In such a situation, Mr. Netanyahu will be able to approach Mr. Trump from a vantage point having agreed to Hamas deal. A return to retaliatory tactics at this juncture will in all likeliness come with the full support of Mr. Trump, maneuvering the Israeli position back to one of strength, like one it enjoyed under Mr. Biden. Previously, Mr. Trump has publicly stated that there would be hell to pay for Hamas if Israeli hostages, which includes American citizens, are not released. Beyond the political intricacies of this ceasefire arrangement, the most important deliverable would be that of critical aid and to the people in Gaza as food and medical shortages surpassed critically a long time ago. Beyond the aid front, the rebuilding of Gaza may yet to be may yet be a premature discussion until alternative political mechanisms are envisioned within the Palestinian fold. This is where Arab powers have an opportunity to exert influence and seek a remolding, reshaping, and revitalization of a Palestinian Authority to better equip Palestinian politics as a core stakeholder for a challenging future where the much sought after two state solution remains a distant reality. Finally, the international community must also play its role to push for sustainability of this deal. The future of West Asian prosperity, newer geo-economic architectures such as India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, a potential expansion of the Abraham Accords, and even radicalization of Saudi Arabia Israel normalization ultimately hinges on this momentum. At the end of the day, management of regional geopolitical fissures by regional powers will determine all the outcomes. Beyond the political intricacies of this ceasefire arrangement, most important deliverable would be that of critical aid to the people of Gaza as food and medical shortages surpassed critically long time ago. Beyond the aid front, rebuilding of Gaza may yet be a premature discussion until alternative political mechanisms are envisioned within the Palestinian fold. This is where the Arab powers have an opportunity to exert influence and seek a remolding, a reshaping, and revitalization of Palestinian Authority to better equip Palestinian politics as a core stakeholder for challenging future. Finally, the international community must also play its role to push for the sustainability of this deal. The future of West Asian prosperity, near geoeconomic architectures such as IMEEC, and potential expansion of Abraham Accords and even radicalization of Saudi Arabia Israel normalization ultimately hinges on this momentum. Government plans to make India hub for mobility sector. Prime Minister. The center is prioritizing electric mobility and reducing the country's import bills on fossil fuels. He highlights that green hydrogen mission and initiatives taken to promote solar power. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said on Friday made a strong pitch for automobile industry to make in India, make for the world, emphasizing that future belongs to Asia and India. At the inauguration of Bharat Mobility Global Expo 25, the Prime Minister outlined several investments made by the government to position India as an attractive destination in the mobility sector. These included the 11 lakh crore allocation for infrastructure spending in the last year budget announcement, the PM Gati Shakti program for multimodal connectivity, national logistics policy, which he said would make India the most competitive in logistics cost globally. The Prime Minister also listed initiatives aimed at advancing electric mobility and reducing the country's import bills on fossil fuels. This includes a focus on developing technologies for electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel, and biofuels through initiatives like the National Electric Mobility and Mission and Green Hydrogen Missions. Additionally, there was also impetus for solar power with the government introducing 18,000 crore worth of production linked incentives for advanced chemistry cell battery storage. The first day of the 5 day expo saw Maruti Suzuki launch its first ever battery electric vehicle, the E Vitara, which will go into production at the automaker's plant in Gujarat in a few months. The electric model will also be exported over 100 countries, including Japan and Europe, establishing India as a global hub for EV manufacturing. The production of the SUV is set to begin soon, with sales expected to open before the end of 25. The car boasts the car boasts a range of 500 km for 60 kilowatt-hour battery variant of a single charge. The automaker will also support its customers with smart home chargers and a network of fast charging stations in the top 100 cities, ensuring charging points are available every 5 to 10 kilometers, along with 1500 EV enabled service workshops covering 1,000 cities, according to Hisashi Takeuchi, managing director and CEO of the company. Maruti plans to be the largest EV manufacturer in the country by the end of 2025. Partho Banerjee, head of marketing and sales, told press persons he said the company would initially have the capacity to manufacture 1 lakh units annually. Hyundai also announced the launch of its first mass market electric vehicle, Hyundai Creta Electric, which it describes as the first indigenous EV SUV in India. It comes with two battery pack options, 51.4 kilowatt hour and 42 kilowatt hour, offering driving ranges of 473 km and 390 km respectively. While Tata Motors did not unveil a new EV in the passenger car segment, it showcased several new products in the commercial vehicle segment. These included the Prima H28, which is a indigenously developed S2 ICE truck with a range of 550 km developed as part of government's hydrogen pilot program. The Ultra E9 is a new truck from the company, and the Intercity EV 2.0, a bus for long distance travel. Trump deal gets Israel security cabinet nod. At least 126 Indians joined Russian army. Supreme Court denies bail to ex-PFI chief Abu Bakr in UAPA case. Budget session of Parliament from January 31 to April 4. The budget session of Parliament will convene on January 31. The first part of the session will conclude on February 13, and the second part will begin on March 10 and go on till April 4. The Election Commission has directed the Union government not to have an Delhi-centric announcements in the budget in view of the assembly polls scheduled on February 5. The Joint Committee on Waqf Amendment Bill 24 is expected to present its report. The NDA allies are not keen to push it through in Parliament. The Joint Parliamentary Committee reviewing the Simultaneous Elections Bill is also scheduled to present its report during the session, though the panel members have contended that it is too short a time to deliberate on such a significant legislation. Registration for cable operators simplified. Union Information and Broadcasting Ministry issued a notification on Friday amending the cable television network rules to streamline the local cable operators registration process. Bangladesh's future depends on Trump's attitude towards interim government, ex-minister. Bangladesh must not become a new home for Islamist extremists from across the world, said one of the key exiled members of the Sheikh Hasina government that was deposed last year in a student people uprising in Dhaka. In an exclusive interview to Hindu, Mohibul Hassan Chaudhry, who was the education minister of Awami League government, said the future of interim government in Bangladesh in the coming months will depend on the attitude of Donald Trump administration in the United States. Dr. Muhammad Yunus invested in the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign and described the victory of Donald Trump in the first term as an eclipse. Given this is his opinion about Donald Trump, I am sure there will be some repercussion for the interim government after President Trump is sworn to office on January 20. Bangladesh should not become a new home for Islamic extremists like Syria and Iraq that served as a basis for these elements during the past decade. Cautioning about the expanding base of extremist groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir and Jamaat-e-Islami, Bangladesh over the past several months. He spoke of the growing influence of Hizb ut-Tahrir that the January 11 had called for establishment for an Islamic state in Bangladesh, and such groups should not be seen in isolation. The situation in Dhaka changed dramatically in the first week of July 24 when Sheikh Hasina left for China and returned to find a full-fledged student-led uprising against the government. Mr. Chaudhry was asked by Ms. Hasina to renegotiate with the student coordinators of anti-discrimination student movement, which quickly escalated when The students call for one-point demand: resignation of Sheikh Hasina. The Hindu has learned that Miss Hasina was planning to hand over power to Parliament Speaker Shireen Sharmeen Chaudhary during the first week of August, and that military was ensuring a lockdown to stabilize the situation. We were present in Gorno Bhavan and were continuously planning how to resolve the protest, and some of us felt of a sudden resignation by the Prime Minister would lead to the dissolution of law and order machinery, and that is why a lockdown was planned. Who said Mr. Chaudhary, who accused the interim government of failing to uphold law and order in the country. Threats in Gulf of Aden and Red Sea could increase, says Defense Minister. Threats in Gulf of Aden, Red Sea in waters adjacent to East African countries might increase, and the Indian Navy is striving to boost its presence and keep the sea routes safe, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said on Friday. India's economic prosperity is linked to maritime security. It is therefore necessary to protect our territorial waters, ensure freedom of navigation, and keep sea routes, which are our maritime highways, safe. In recent years, major naval powers have reduced their presence in the Indian Ocean region. While the Indian Navy has increased its, there is a possibility of increase in threats in the Gulf of Aden, Red Sea, and sea areas adjacent to East African countries. In view of Indian Navy's working towards increasing its presence further, the minister said, addressing the event organized to commemorate 24 as the Year of Naval Civilians. Mr. Singh stressed that military is surging forward with a big mandate and a complex structure, and civilian workforce soldiers without uniforms play a pivotal role as they work behind scenes to provide significant strength to the troops. In the border perspective, every responsible civilian is a soldier without uniform, and every soldier is a civilian in uniform. In his address, Navy Chief Admiral Dinesh K. Tripathi acknowledged that critical role of naval civilians in supporting the Navy's operations by providing technical assistance, administrative management, and logistic support. Their role is essential to Navy's combat readiness and operational success. The event began with a special photo and painting exhibition, etc. BJP releases the first part of manifesto for Delhi polls, offers nutritional kits 21,008 for pregnant women, increased pension and LPG cylinders at 500 for low-income families are also on the cards. Lokpal ordered probe in 24 cases in 5 years, granted not for prosecution in 6 of them. 12 years since the Lokpal Act was passed and 5 years after the Lokpal, the country's first anti-corruption body started to function. It has ordered investigation in just 24 cases and granted prosecution sanction in 6 cases. The Lokpal, which has the power to investigate the powers to invest has the power to investigate complaints against public functionaries, received 3 complaints against Prime Minister Narendra Modi in October December last year. The Lokpal has rejected a large number of complaints, nearly 90% over the past 5 years, as they were not in the correct format. At least 2,300 defect-free complaints were registered with the Lokpal in 5 years, with 226 complaints lodged from April 1 to December 2024. Of the total complaints, 3% were against Prime Minister, Member of Parliament of the or the Union Minister. 21% complaints were against Group ABCD officials of the Union Government. 35% against chairperson members in the central government bodies, and 41% against those in the others category. As per Section 53 of Lokpal and Lokayuktas Act 2013, a complaint can be entertained only if it is filed within a period of 7 years from the date of alleged offence. Though the Lokpal Act was passed in 2013, the country's first Lokpal, Justice Pinaki Chandra Ghosh, was appointed on March 19, 2019, along with 8 other members. Justice Ghosh moved out of office in May 22, 2022 after turning 70. Justice A.M. Khanwalkar was appointed second Lokpal in 2024. To improve the efficiency of anti-corruption body, the authorities are actively looking at structuring the workforce by recruiting permanent staff to replace the temporary employees who were brought in during the transitional period. Lokpal awaits decision on proposals sent to the union government on several occasions for filing for the post of Director of Inquiry and Director of Prosecution. In the meanwhile, preliminary inquiries and investigations are being entrusted with the Central Vigilance Commission and Central Bureau of Investigation as mandated. According to Section 11 of the CVC Act 2003, a Director of Inquiry not below the rank of Joint Secretary ought to be appointed in the CVC by the Union Government for conducting preliminary inquiries referred to it by Lokpal. However, presently, in the absence of Director of Inquiry, the cases referred by Lokpal are being inquired into with the aid of civil central vigilance officers of ministries and organizations concerned. Direct CBI to lodge FIR against High Court judge. Senior advocates wrote Chief Justice of India Sanjeev Khanna to direct the CBI to lodge a first information report against the Allahabad High Court Judge Shekhar Kumar Yadav after taking suo motu notice of the communal comments reported to have been made by him during a speech at an event of Vishwa Hindu Parishad. The petition said Justice Yadav's comments drew a stark and inflammatory distinction between two religious communities. It was blatant, divisive rhetoric disregarding judicial impartiality. End violence before political talks. Center to Kuki-Zo Council. The Union Home Ministry has told the members of Kuki-Zo Council that cessation of violence is a prerequisite to initiate political dialogue in Manipur. The tribal leaders insisted that this cannot be one-sided demand. Four members of the newly formed council, the apex body of the Kuki-Zo tribes in Manipur, met A.K. Mishra, the Ministry's security advisor for the northeastern India. Manipur has been affected by ethnic violence since May 3, 2023, which has claimed the lives of more than 250 people so far. The Home Ministry officials said that for political talks to happen, there should be peace first. No violence and no firing. We told them there are circumstances when we are attacked and have no option but to retaliate. You cannot only ask us for peace, it has to be from both sides. From our side, we are ready to maintain peace, said Ginza Wulansong, spokesperson of the Kuki-Zo Council. He said the Kuki-Zo Council has pressed its demand for separate administration or a union territory with legislature for Kuki-Zo people who live in the hill districts. Mr. Walzong that lived in the past, various organizations such as Committee of Tribal Unity and Kank Pokpi and the Indigenous Tribal Leaders Forum in Churachandpur were in talks with the union government at different levels. From now on, however, the Kuki-Zo Council will be a unified body representing the community in talks with the Home Ministry. It will be the main platform to discuss the issues of community, he said. Advo- uh, Adding that when it comes to local issues, the groups active in specific areas will take responsibility. Social media firms largely compliant with rulings. Social media companies are working smoothly with grievance appellate committees that hear appeals against content complaints and takedowns, offering little resistance to GSE rulings. A top IT ministry official said the GST was set under the IT Rules 2021 grievance appellant committee set up होती है with a mandate to hear appeals from Indian users against social media firms which have more than 5 lakh active Indian users. The committees can rule whether the content has to be taken down or reinstated. Firms like Meta Meta Platform Inc., which owns Facebook and Instagram, have largely been cooperative, and the GSEs and comply with their orders. The GSEs have received 2,500 appeals since October 23 and have deposed 2,300. In six transparency reports published by Meta for the period between June and December, the firm said it complied with 100% of the 271 orders it received from the GSE. Google also reported complying. Ashutosh Shukla, a retired IPS officer who is a member of the second GSE, which he says has handled majority of complaints filed so far, that social media firms generally comply with GSE orders. Union Secretary for Electronics and Information Technology S. Krishnan said in an interview with the Hindu that the GSEs have a fairly good dynamic and that the system has been working smoothly to redress complaints. Sav's attackers on the run, 10 police teams set up for probe. Courts must not use abetment of suicide to charge mechanically. The Supreme Court held that the police must not deploy the criminal provision of abetments of suicide casually or to assuage the immediate feelings of the distraught family members of the deceased. The bench of Justices K.V. Vishwanathan and A.K. Okas said Section 306 abetment of suicide and erstwhile Indian Penal Code corresponding Section 108 of read with Section 45 of the Bharati Nyaya Samhita 2023 appeared to be too readily resorted to by the police. In order to bring a case of abetment of suicide, that police must carefully examine whether the accused has played an active role in the instigating or facilitating the death of the person. To satisfy the requirement of instigation by the accused by his or her act of or omission by the continued course of conduct should have had created such circumstances that the deceased was left with no other options except to end their own lives. A word uttered in a fit of anger and emotion without intending the consequences to actually follow cannot be said to instigation. The court said it was time to investigating agencies were sensitized to law laid down by the Supreme Court under Section 306 so that persons were not subjected to abuse of the process of an untenable prosecution. The trial courts must exercise great caution and circumspection and should not adopt to play it. The judgment was dealing with an appeal filed by an accused in a case of abetment of suicide of a young man. Kolkata court to pronounce verdict in Arjikar case today. A Kolkata court is set to deliver on Saturday the verdict in the case of rape and murder of a 31-year-old trainee doctor at the Arjikar in August last year. The additional district and sessions court Sialda held day-to-day trial after a charge sheet was filed in the case on October 7. The CBI has charged Sanjay Roy, civic police volunteer, with the gruesome crime. The police charges were framed under Section 64, punishment for rape, 66, punishment for causing death, and resulting in persistent vegetative state, and Section 103, punishment for murder in Bharati Nyaya Samhita. 64, rape, 66, causing death, and 103 for murder. Research questions iron deficiency as the key cause of anemia in India. The conventional wisdom that iron deficiency is the primary cause of anemia may be outdated, with the host of new factors ranging from vitamin B12 deficiency to air pollution influencing anemia, says a study involving researchers at multiple institutions that was published earlier this week. Moreover, the manner in which blood is drawn testing anemia is under public health programs can dramatically alter estimations of the condition. Anemia is caused by lack of enough red blood cells or hemoglobin. The common wisdom is that insufficient iron is the culprit and is driving force behind policy interventions such as iron supplementation or mixing iron into staple foods biofortification. The latest NFHS 5 suggests that despite decades of policy intervention, anemia has only gotten worse. The latest study funded by Department of Biotechnology measured various blood hemoglobin concentrations for about 4,500 people in 8 states. The major proportion of anemia in all groups studied was due to unknown causes of anemia. This could be due to deficiency in other blood producing nutrients like B12 or folate, or due to hemoglobinopathies. Shun divisive tactics like caste and focus on staff welfare, railways tell trade unions. Drone survey of land in over 3 lakh villages completed. The union government has completed a survey of 67,000 of rural land worth 132 lakh crore, Panchayati Raj Department said on Friday. To fix economy, boost consumption. Reserve Bank of India officials monitoring of sticky food inflation and its second order effects pins hope on rekindling private capex through improved disposable incomes for the people amid an anything but ordinary global economy. Cabinet approves reframing 8687 MHz spectrum. The Union Cabinet has approved refarming of 687 MHz spectrum for mobile services. Tech Mahindra kicks off Chennai AI Savvy Production Hub. The Tech Mahindra Limited has opened Advanced Manufacturing Experience Center in its Sholinganur campus in Chennai. The center was inaugurated by Anand Mahindra, chairman of Mahindra Group, and Mohit Joshi, CEO and managing director of Tech Mahindra. Odisha ties up with Singaporean entities for scaling and R&D. Odisha signed 8 MOUs with different Singaporean entities as Singapore president embarked a 2-day visit to the state on Friday. CBIC needs to reassess gold limits under baggage rules, Delhi High Court. Delhi High Court has said that the value of gold permissible under the baggage rules for travellers coming from abroad to India will have to be relooked by the CBIC, saying it appears to be completely not in tune with the current market value of gold. Moreover, the court is of the view that baggage rules must require a relook, considering the market rate of gold is at present, where 40 grams of gold would be costing much more than the value of 1 lakh. Mulholland Drive and Twin Peaks director David Lynch dies at 78. Indian sentenced to 8 years of attempted attack on White House. US Supreme Court holds law banning TikTok in the country. China's population declines for the third consecutive year, straining economy. Pakistani court sentenced Imran wife to prison for graft. China's population stood at 1.4 billion at the end of 24, a decline of 1.3 million from the previous year. Migrant boat capsizes off West African coast, killing 40 Pakistanis. Russia and Iran signed treaty to deepen their ties in the face of Western sanctions. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian counterpart Masoud Pezeshkian signed a broad cooperation pact on Friday as their countries deepen their partnership in face of stringing Western sanctions. Russian and Iranian officials say that comprehensive strategic partnership treaty covers all areas from trade and military cooperation to science, education and culture. Mr. Putin praised the deal as a real breakthrough, cutting conditions for a stable and sustainable development of Russia, Iran, and entire region. He said the amount of trade and economic cooperation was still insufficient, voicing hopes the new treaty will help expand them. He said the countries are trying to resolve technical obstacles to advance planned projects to ship Russian natural gas to Iran and build transport corridors to Iranian ports in the Gulf. Mr. Pezeshkian said the projects are feasible, adding that experts were working to resolve the remaining obstacles. His visit came ahead of Monday's inauguration of President elect Donald Trump, who has pledged to broker peace in Ukraine and take a tougher stance on Iran, which is grappling with growing economic problems and other challenges. Russia sentences three Navalny royals to years behind bars. Preserving a spearhead's menace while keeping Bumrah healthy is Indian cricket's chief priority. You learn from him how he prepares, how he thinks from stopping a good ball, his mentality after conceding a goal, what he does during penalty corners and shootouts, and how he reacts in pressure situations. How game changer Vincent Vanast is inspiring a new generation of goalkeeper. The legendary Belgian custodian, world and Olympic champion, is setting a high benchmark in Hockey India League. In addition to being an exceptional role model, he is a generous mentor. It's no surprise that young Indian goalkeepers are benefiting from his presence. Kho World Cup, Indian teams to face South Africa in semi-finals. Attacking Pipers call the tune against Surma. President gives away the Khel Ratna and the National Sports Awards. President Draupadi Murmu conferring the Major Dhyanchand Khel Ratna Award from right on Gukesh, Harmanpreet, Praveen Kumar and Manu. Manu Bhaker and D. Gukesh provided a sprinkling of stardust when it was the para-athletics who walked away with most boisterous applause when President Draupadi Murmu bestowed the national awards in regal ceremony at Rashtrapati Bhavan. Double Olympic medalist, 18-year-old chess champion Gukesh, men's hockey captain Harmanpreet Singh, and Paralympic gold-winning high jumper Praveen Kumar were presented the country's highest sporting honor, Major Dhyan Chand Khel Ratna. 32 athletes were honored with Arjuna Award, out of which 17 were para-athletes. A heartwarming moment of the ceremony was when Indian first Para-Olympic gold medalist Murlikant Petkar walked up to the president on crutches to receive the Arjuna Award lifetime. Gaza truce deal gets Israel Security Cabinet approval. The deal now goes to Israel's full cabinet of ministers for final sign-off. The ceasefire could start as early as tomorrow, however the pact has drawn fierce resistance from Netanyahu's far-right allies. Supreme Court stays High Court order on health scheme rollout in Delhi. Supreme Court stayed a Delhi High Court order to arm AAP government in the capital to enter into an MOU with the Center for Implementing Prime Minister ABHIM scheme. End violence before talks, government to cookies body. At least 126 Indians joined Russian army, 16 missing, says center. The government is aware of at least 126 cases of Indians who joined the Russian army to fight in the war in Ukraine, the Ministry of External Affairs said on Friday. According to the latest figures release of 126 Indian men that the Indian embassy in Moscow had been intimated about, 96 have returned to India thus far. Of the remainder, 12 have been killed in the conflict, including one from Kerala who died last week. Supreme Court urges resolution of State Governor Roe. Bharat Mobility Global Expo aims to make India hub for mobility sector, says Modi. Dying for black gold in Assam, Meghalaya, the dangerous practice continues unabated. Will provide free bus rides to students, says Kejriwal. Supreme Court stays High Court order asking Delhi government to sign health scheme MOU with centre. PM Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission scheme. Resolve Vice Chancellor impasse before next hearing, Supreme Court tells Tamil Nadu Governor. Court asks centre to consider application by Sri Lankan Tamil of Indian citizen for citizenship. So that's all. See you in the next one.